When the feeding relationships among the various organisms in an ecosystem form a network of complex interactions, ecologists describe these relationships as a food web. A food web links all the food chains in an ecosystem together. The food web shows the feeding relationships in a salt marsh community. Trophic levels. Each step in a food chain or food web is called a trophic level. Producers make up the first trophic level, consumers make up the second, third, or the higher trophic levels. Each consumer depends on the trophic level below it for energy. Ecological pyramids. The amount of energy or matter in an ecosystem can be represented by an ecological pyramid. An ecological pyramid is a diagram that shows the relative amounts of energy or matter contained within each trophic level in a food chain or food web. Ecologists recognize three different types of ecological pyramids: energy pyramids, biomass pyramids, and pyramids of numbers. Energy pyramid. Theoretically, there is no limit to the number of trophic levels that a food chain can support, but there is one hitch. One part of the energy that is stored in one trophic level is passed on to the next level. This is because organisms use much of the energy that they consume for life processes, such as respiration, movement, and reproduction. Some of the remaining energy is released into the environment as heat. Only about 10% of the energy available within one trophic level is transferred to organisms at the next trophic level. For instance, 1/10 of the solar energy captured by grasses end up stored in the tissues of cows and other grazers. Only 1/10 of that energy, 10% of 10%, or 1% total, is transferred to the humans that eat the cows. Thus, the more levels that exist between a producer and a top-level consumer in an ecosystem, the less energy that remains from the original amount. Biomass pyramid. The total amount of living tissue within a given trophic level is called biomass. Biomass is usually expressed in terms of grams of organic matter per unit area. A biomass pyramid represents the amount of potential food available for each trophic level in an ecosystem. Pyramid of numbers. Ecological pyramids can also be based on the numbers of individual organisms at each trophic level. For some ecosystems, the shape of the pyramid of numbers is the same as that of the energy and biomass pyramids. This, however, is not always the case. In most forests, for example, there are fewer producers than there are consumers. A single tree has a large amount of energy and biomass, but it is only one organism. Many insects live in the tree, but they have less energy and biomass. Thus, a pyramid of numbers for a forest ecosystem would not resemble a typical pyramid at all. Chapter 3-2 Section Assessment. Number 1. Key Concept. What are the two main forms of energy that power living systems? Answer. Sunlight is the main energy source of life on Earth, but some types of organisms rely on the energy stored in inorganic chemical compounds. Number 2. Key Concept. Briefly describe the flow of energy among organisms in an ecosystem. Answer. Energy flows through an ecosystem in one direction, from the sun or inorganic compounds to autotrophs, producers, and then to various heterotrophs, consumers. Number 3. Key Concept. What proportion of energy is transferred from one trophic level to the next in an ecosystem? Answer. Only about 10% of energy available within one trophic level is transferred to organisms at the next trophic level. Chapter 3-3 Cycles of Matter. Energy is crucial to an ecosystem, but all organisms need more than energy to survive. They also need water, minerals, and other life-sustaining compounds. In most organisms, more than 95% of the body is made up of just 4 elements: oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. Although these 4 elements are common on Earth, organisms cannot use them unless the elements are in a chemical form that cells can take up. Recycling in the biosphere. Energy and matter move through the biosphere very differently. Unlike the one-way flow of energy, matter is recycled within and between ecosystems. Elements, chemical compounds, and other forms of matter are passed from one organism to another, and from one part of the biosphere to another through biogeochemical cycles. As the long word suggests, biogeochemical cycles contain biological, geological, and chemical aspects of the biosphere. Matters can cycle through the biosphere because biological systems do not use up matter, they transform it. The matter is assembled into living tissue or passed out of the body as waste products. Imagine for a moment that you are a carbon atom in a molecule of carbon dioxide floating in the air of a wetland. The leaf of a blueberry bush absorbs you during photosynthesis. You become part of a carbohydrate molecule, and you are used to make fruit. The fruit is eaten by a caribou, and within a few hours you are passed out of the animal's body. You are soon swallowed by a dung beetle, then combined into the body tissue of a hungry shrew, which is then eaten by an owl. Finally, you are released into the atmosphere once again when the owl exhales. Then the cycle starts again. Simply put, biogeochemical systems pass the same molecules around again and again within the biosphere. Just think, with every breath you take, you inhale hundreds of thousands of oxygen atoms that might have been inhaled by dinosaurs millions of years ago. The water cycle. All living things require water to survive. Where does all this water come from? It moves between the ocean, atmosphere, and land. Water molecules enter the atmosphere as water vapor, a gas, when they evaporate from the ocean or other bodies of water. The process by which water changes from liquid form to an atmospheric gas is called evaporation. Water can also enter the atmosphere by evaporating from the leaves of plants in the process of transpiration. During the day, the sun heats the atmosphere. As the warm, moist air rises, it cools. Eventually, the water vapor condenses into tiny droplets that form clouds. When the droplets become large enough, the water returns to Earth's surface in the form of precipitation, rain, snow, sleet, or hail. On land, much of the precipitation runs along the surface of the ground until it enters a river or a stream that carries the runoff back to an ocean or lake. Rain also seeps through into the soil, some of it deeply enough to become groundwater. Water in the soil enters plants through the roots, and the water cycle begins anew. Nutrient cycles. The food you eat provides energy and chemicals that keep you alive. All the chemical substances that an organism needs to sustain life are its nutrients. Think of them as the body's chemical building blocks. Primary producers, such as plants, usually obtain nutrients in simple inorganic forms from their environment. Consumers, such as monkeys, obtain nutrients by eating other organisms. Every living organism needs nutrients to build tissue and carry out essential life functions. Like water, nutrients are passed between organisms and the environment through biogeochemical cycles. The carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, and phosphorus cycle are especially important. Note also that oxygen participates in all these cycles by combining with these elements and cycling with them during various parts of their journey. The carbon cycle. Carbon plays many roles. Carbon is a key ingredient of living tissue. In the form of calcium carbonate, carbon is an important component of animal skeletons and is found in several kinds of rocks. Carbon and oxygen form carbon dioxide gas, an important component of the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is taken in by plants during photosynthesis and is given off by both plants and animals during respiration. Four main types of processes move carbon through its cycle.